So yes, I've been with LPL for about 6 years, and it'll be six, I think, in June, actually. I started in 2020, and I've worked with financial advisors all over the country with different backgrounds and setups and offices. So I like doing these types of events to see what people are struggling with, what questions, what concerns, and what technology you're already using. So I will ask for a little bit of participation as I go. Plus, it'll give me a break from talking for the full time. We're going to go for maybe about 30, 40 minutes, right? And then just so I make sure everybody is aware, the bathrooms are over here. So if you have to go, you can go that way for that. And then there is water, snacks, and everything there. So please get some sweet treats as well. Okay, so 4 areas we're going to talk about today. Protecting your information. We will also talk about common cyber attacks and scams that we're seeing. I will also walk you through how to best secure your accounts, your devices, your home, and then we'll talk about protecting your family. So I know cybersecurity is a very hot topic, but I always like to get into what is it, right? We say cybersecurity all the time. It's a buzzword. We hear it on the news all of the time. And at this point, it can be kind of either scary or exhausting to hear. But cybersecurity ultimately is the art of protecting networks, devices, accounts, and data and information from unauthorized access or criminal use, right? And that practice of taking something and making sure it's not given away and that confidentiality stays that way. And we should care. And I think growing up, and you probably were similar, we hear about criminals and we think they're, bad in the dark, hiding in plain sight. And they're not always very smart. Sometimes we think of smart criminals, but cyber criminals are one of the smartest groups of criminals that we have, right? They are incredibly intelligent. They oftentimes work together. And I mean work together as in they can band together as a big group. They can work together across countries. And they are incredibly smart and talented. And they are not doing these things usually as a sole act. Sometimes we do see that. But we have to remember these are smart folks. And they know a lot, and they're usually one step ahead of the next crime or the next thing. So we have to be mindful that these aren't your everyday criminals that are out pickpocketing and doing things like that. We see these in a different classification from regular crime, right? Extortion or somebody trying to just take money to disgruntled employees at companies. We've seen this happen, and then they do bad things and information ends up where it shouldn't. Obviously, terrorism, warfare, right? The military layer of it. But we see a lot of different types of cyber criminals, but it's important to remember that they're out there, they're smart, and they're working together. And throughout our lives, it really, and this is the sad part, no matter where you are, there's always something that essentially could affect you from a cyber perspective. We've got kids, we've got children, teens, where we see child's identity theft. That still happens quite a bit. New account creation, synthetic identity theft. And I had to look that up when I first saw it. I'm like, what is synthetic identity theft? And it is when somebody uses partially true or true information, and then the other part, it's made up. So maybe they'll use a real name, maybe a real address, but then a fake social or vice versa. So it's partially real information, partially not. And then as we get older, we see credit card fraud, we see employment fraud, wire fraud, tax refund. That's something we see really all the time. Account takeovers. And then when we get to our older community, we see even more things. Elder abuse, family impersonation scams. These hurt the older community, I think, a bit more. Phishing scams we see across the board, tax refunds, Social Security, healthcare, the list goes on and on. There's all different types. So we just want to be aware of what could be potentially focused on us or the people around us, right? I think about my nieces, I think about my parents, my grandparents, and what's after them. Now, here at WealthClarity, I like to make sure that everybody kind of knows their part, right? And it's a multi-street organization that we have here. So we have you all, and it's up to you all to make sure that you are protecting yourselves, your account information, your asset information, your personal information, that you're doing your part to protect yourself, and that you're not doing things that could put yourself at risk or the office, your financial office, and also your peers. And then we have WealthClarity, whose job is to make sure that they are protecting their business and your information that they have, and that they're communicating with LPL and doing what LPL has asked of them and that FINRA has required of them. And then obviously we have LPL. And LPL wants to make sure that, we're properly staffed. We have the teams and the tools out there to help protect ourselves and our information, as well as the offices and then you guys. So there's a lot of different things at play, but we all have a responsibility. We cannot assume that WealthClarity is doing all that they need to do for cyber and that we can just kind of coast through, or vice versa, as well as with LPL. So it's our job to keep us all accountable, and I think it's important to remember that. But where LPL kind of plays a part, so in the event that you are interested and you have time in the next week or so, check out, check is excited. I'm excited too. This is really exciting information. But LPL's got a website, lpl.com. And on this website, we actually have a new page or a new section. It's new-ish because this wasn't here when I first joined LPL. But you can go to the website and you can find articles. So part of my team creates the articles. So we've got articles. I'm trying to get more videos on there because I like videos. But there's information on all kinds of cyber topics that you can check out. And I recommend maybe a couple times a year just peeking at the lpl.com website to see what we've got and what we've created. If there's ever something that you want to see that you don't, reach out to WealthClarity. They'll reach out to me and I'll talk about it with my team and we'll figure it out. But there's information out there because we want to make sure that we are communicating to everybody and that this information is not kept secret or hidden. We realize too that the internet is a very big place. YouTube is incredible and there's a lot out there, but I've done my own research on YouTube for how some of the tech people create video content. And it's definitely lacking. I think there's some room to improve that. And if I could clone myself, that's what I would probably have that one clone doing, is creating content for YouTube and making videos. But we do have some things here. So definitely check out that website. And then I like to point out our LPL's cyber fraud guarantee. And this is really just talking about the fact that LPL is doing its part. And we are covering ourselves to the point where if there is something bad that happens, LPL will reimburse you for 100% of realized losses in your impacted LPL accounts. So that's basically if LPL is attacked and something happens on an LPL device, network, etc., due to unauthorized access to one of our systems, and it affects your LPL accounts, you are guaranteed reimbursement. So I think that's nice to know, right? And it gives you on both sides. We know that we are solid in protecting you all, and that you guys have that. But that's just for your LPL accounts, right? We have a lot of other accounts besides all of our LPL information. So that's what we're going to get into here. Okay. Am I talking too fast? Are we doing well? Okay. I've had just a little bit of coffee, but you see how much I have left because I do get excited and I will get really, really into these things. Okay. So this is actually one of my most upsetting slides. And at the end, I can show you a different slide. Yeah. So every year I have been presenting on this. You see 2018, 2019, right? Everything was okay. Who would have known those would have been the good days? We have the pandemic here, and where's the clicker? Is the clicker up here? That's not the clicker. It's okay. You guys can see. Right here, we have the pandemic. And of course, there's a jump, right? We're all at home. We are hanging out. We're noticing that, a lot of us are on the computers way more than we were before, maybe in 2018, 2019. We're on the computers. We're kind of bored. We're by ourselves sometimes. It's just not the best of times. So we're seeing an increase in crime. So this whole report, it's actually from, I pulled this slide from a report that the FBI releases every spring. So in April of every year, they release this presentation. It's not a very lengthy document. If you're interested, I found it fascinating because they break down a lot of this. And this is one example of our folks over 60, but there's a lot of different graphs and things and breakdowns in this report. But I noticed here, okay, we've seen an uptick in crimes reported and money lost during the pandemic. Of course, that makes sense. And then 2023, 2024, I will show you the other slide that I presented on before of this. And now we see this huge increase in money lost and in crimes reported between 2024 and 2025. And I don't even want to think about what 2026 is going to end up looking like next year. So this is not good. And we're seeing this happen from a variety of different ways of, senior scams that are targeting folks over 60 that may have, tech support scams. We're seeing romance scams, which is one of my it's the one that to me is the most heartbreaking, because a lot of times people don't believe that they're being scammed in a romance scam. Lottery, sweepstakes, right? The phishing emails tend to bring a lot of those. Identity theft, very popular. I see that happening even just within my advisor groups every few months. Government impersonation scams, really, really big. If anybody in here is into podcasts, do we have any podcast listeners, YouTube listeners? Yeah. So one of my favorite podcasts that may surprise you, but I found fascinating, is there's a podcast called The Perfect Scam, and it is hosted by AARP, and I think it's brilliant. The host is fantastic, and he talks to people, real victims of real cyber crimes, and they get into what happened. And the person will get on the show and tell the story. And there was one, I'll briefly tell you this sneak peek so you can go listen to it. But there was one, it was a government impersonation scam, and this woman had received a phone call, and on her caller ID it said IRS. And so she's thinking, okay, well, caller ID says IRS. She answers the phone. This person knew so much about her. And then when she asked to confirm this person's identity, they tell her to go to this website, and lo and behold, the person on the phone, their website stated, there was either a photo or a bio of this man, and they knew about her college experience, about her spouse, and they had so much data on her. And they tried to get her to send money. And at some point during the transfer of money process, she did flag in her head, okay, something's not right. And she was able to stop sending additional funds. But it was just fascinating and super interesting how this particular scam went down. And they talk about all kinds of scams. Some of them are really intense. Some of them are more everyday scams. But it's still interesting to see how these are affecting people and just how sneaky people can be, and also convincing. So we'll talk more about that. But this slide here is one of my most jarring, because it is really sad to see these stats. And it's a personal mission of mine to try to educate as many people as I can so that this doesn't happen. And hopefully, we may not be able to get back to 2019 and 2020 numbers, but I would at least like to not see such huge jumps every year. Okay, so the way we look at social engineering, which really is the art of taking emotions and using emotions to get something that this other person may want. Phishing, most of us have heard of phishing, right? Email phishing or spear phishing. Spear phishing is where they are attacking you specifically, and they know your name, they know your information. It's more directed to you, but phishing is via email. Vishing is over the phone. By the way, I did not make any of these terms up. These were other somebody else put this together. There's actually a fourth one called quishing, if you can believe that, and that's with QR codes. That's a newer one, but we don't see it as often. Maybe we will soon. But vishing is going to be over the phone, right? That's when someone calls and is trying to get money from you, take data from you, etc., over the phone. Smishing is with SMS, texting. So that's going to be those. Did anybody get that toll road text message saying that you owed? Probably one of my favorite scams from a clever and intelligence perspective, because they made so much money from that scam. And they just kept doing it. And they didn't take much, right? Because most states have toll roads in some shape or form, or most people use a toll or have access to one. So it was a brilliant scam, and it's still kind of going. I think a lot of folks are still getting these text messages, but that's what smishing is. And then quishing is going to be the QR codes. So these are different scams that we see under these different umbrellas, and we've just got to be aware of how they work. So this here, now this slide usually moves, but this is a PDF. But when you get a phishing email, I like to take people through what I call the top-down approach. So my mom had reached out to me one day. She says, Whitney, I thought you were handling the family Netflix account. I'm like, well, I am, because she didn't want to deal with it anymore, and my siblings. So I took over the Netflix account. I'm the manager of it. And she says, but I got an email from Netflix saying that something with the account, it was suspended or something like that. And so I said, well, let's look at the email. And I literally did this with her. The first thing we did, and it can be a little different on your cell phone, so just pay attention to that. Your email will look different, and what you see on your cell phone will be different than on your computer. So right here you see joe.hill. That's going to look a little different. on your cell phone. It may even like not even show up. It'll just say Joe Hill. It won't show you the actual email. So you click on it. That's the first thing we did. Let's look at who it's from. And when we looked at it, of course, the email was, like j24 something at somethingweird.net, right? It was not a real email address that was going to go to Netflix. So that was the first red flag. And then we kept going. The urgent attention grabbing subject, right? This one here says, we've paused your credit, but it could be, your account is suspended or your account is on hold or we've been trying to reach you, something like that. Usually with greetings, if it's generic, that's a red flag. Because the way that email works, right? You usually are getting an email because you have signed up for something. And when you sign up for something, the first thing they ask you for besides your email is your name. So when they say something like, valued, that's a red flag. And most people skip that because they just assume, oh, well, it's just like a greeting. It's like, no, it should say your name. Suspicious links. So this link here is, you can actually see the link, but sometimes they're embedded, meaning that it'll just say here and it'll be blue and you won't be able to see what the link is. So we have to be careful. Either one is creepy and not something we want to click on or touch, but that's also a red flag. Attachments. Red flag. If you have an attachment, those are called invoice scams. I'm a very curious person. Some of us are even more curious and dare we say nosy, and you just want to see what it is. What is in the, I don't know. And if you click on that, that could potentially cause a sequence of events where now you've downloaded this file, maybe it's downloading something else, and then it causes this domino effect on your device. So we definitely do not, this is not the time to be curious. Right? If you're going to be curious about anything, be curious about who sent it and if you're seeing anything weird within the email. Grammatical errors. This is my favorite part. As was mentioned, I'm a big reader. I love scanning emails for typos. It's just a thing. I don't know why. I like to do it. Oftentimes you will find them. And it's just a matter of like playing the game of, can I find the typo or not? Of these, they will look accurate. Now, during the holidays, that's when we tend to see the like tracking ones. We see a spike in those because everybody's ordering presents. All of us are, right? Most of us at any given time in the week of maybe December, maybe November, Black Friday, we're all waiting for at least one package. So when you get a text like this, it could be from UPS. I've seen USPS. That's another common one. They won't always use an image, but you'll get this message saying, hey, can you verify your address? It's very sneaky and it gets people. And we have to make sure we're not interacting with these text messages or these other, buttons. And sometimes these can be very, very convincing, if you will. And if you look here, hello, that's just strange. The fact that they have hello, it's underlined. Is it a link? Why is it underlined? Why doesn't it say my name? It's a little strange, right? And just making sure we're looking at everything with a very questionable, right? Questionable view. So these text messages here really recommend that you report. You see that at the bottom there. You may not be able to see it in the back, but it says report junk. But most of us, when we get those messages, Apple kind of knows if you have an Apple device. I'm assuming Samsung has it as well, where it'll say, this doesn't look right. Maybe we can just report spam or report block. And then you can do that. And I recommend it for SMS. And I also recommend it if you have WhatsApp. A lot of us use WhatsApp if we are traveling, if we have international family members or friends. I have a friend who just moved to Portugal and we use WhatsApp. I have a friend who just moved to the UK. We use WhatsApp. And it's really convenient, but there's a lot of scams happening on WhatsApp. And they just will find your phone number and add you to chats and threads and whatnot. So you definitely want to block, remove, report. Okay. Phishing. So this is going to be over the phone. So this is the one that I get really nervous about and that I want everybody to pay attention to. But phishing is going to be like that IRS scam that I mentioned, where they were, impersonating the government. I have seen one where I've seen several, but there's another one that I found interesting, and it was a lady got a call from the local police department saying that she had missed jury duty. Have you guys heard of these kinds of? Yeah, she had missed jury duty. And you can hear in the background, like the dispatch people, and it sounds like it's a, like on TV, like a real police department. And they say, yeah, you've missed jury duty. You're going to have to pay the fine. There's a fee. Here's how you can send the money. And of course, I think we've all thrown something out on accident from the mail. Maybe we missed it. Maybe we didn't see it. And so now she's really thinking she missed jury duty. This is terrible. And there's a fee. And like, these are the types of scams that we're seeing where the person is either impersonating a government official or, local PD, or sometimes a job. And then we also see them impersonating relatives. We have got to the point where they can take voices and they can call you and say, hey, it's your grandson. I'm in Las Vegas. I got into some trouble. Can you help me? And it sounds like your grandson, right? And because they may have taken his voice. But it's just really interesting that we're seeing more of this happening. So what can we do, right? What are they trying to do? They're trying usually to get money. Sometimes they'll try to get information. Usually they want one of two things, right? It's information, data, or they want money. Those are really the two things that we tend to see. Sometimes I think people do this just to be annoying, but I think that's a small percentage of, the larger amount. And then what I recommend for those situations is to figure out, for the family situations, is to figure out some kind of a code word. We've talked about this a lot. You can get a code word. I also recommend to make sure that you only send money to family and friends via one known app across the board, right? I know a lot of us may have multiple sending ways for apps like Cash App or Venmo or Zelle, or what's another one? PayPal. Is that all of them? There's more probably, right? And now we have Apple Cash. There's all the different ways to send money. But I really recommend that if you know, like I know my mom likes to use Zelle because that's with USAA. So we're a military family. We have USAA. It's in there. It's easy to do. I've also heard that Zelle can be really creepy for Facebook Marketplace. If you're selling something, that's a big scam currently that's going on. So we need to pay attention to things like this. But within your family, that's something you can control. And you can say, okay, I'm only sending money via Venmo. If you call me and ask me to send you money via Bitcoin, via a courier pigeon, anything besides Venmo, I'm not sending it. And you also need that code, right? We also need that family word. That's what I would recommend. And that means having a conversation with everybody and saying, hey, let's agree. What is the word going to be? And then moving forward, that's what we're going to have to protect. Now, that doesn't help with government impersonation scams, right? We can't do that with the IRS or with our local PD, but what we can do is always verify. And that's why on the best practices, you can verify. So when I say verify, that IRS scam I mentioned, where the lady had received the call and the guy knew all about her, he knew that she would probably try to verify who he was. And so he sent her a link or a website to go to, where of course his name was listed in the email or in the website somewhere. So do not do that. If you need to verify on your own. Do not do it via anything that they may send you or give you. Do it on your own. That's happened to me before. I have Bank of America for our LPL corporate card. And I had gotten a phone call and it was super random. And I answer it and she's like, yeah, hi, I'm looking for Whitney. I'm calling from Bank of America. I'm like, okay, what can I help you with, right? We're chatting. Oh, well, I had some questions. I said, I really wasn't expecting this phone call. If you don't mind, I'm actually going to end this call and call back on my own. Oh, yeah, sure. That's no problem. Green flag. She wasn't upset. She didn't get annoyed. There was no frustration. She wasn't trying to use any emotional scare tactics to keep me on the phone. That's a red flag. If she had said, oh, no, it's fine. You don't have to do that. I'm definitely who I'm saying I am, and I'm totally calling from Bank of America, and I need blank from you, right? That's a red flag. Anytime somebody is trying to keep you on the phone, and that's also a great litmus test if you're ever on the phone with a potential scammer, just say, hey, sorry, my cat just fell down. I gotta go. Let me call you right back, and then see what they say. If they try to keep you on that line, that is a red flag. There is no reason why they should. If they're calling from a legitimate company, they should not be trying to keep you on the phone. And if you say, hey, sorry, I just watched my cat fall off the couch or whatever, I've got to go, and they have that reaction, that does not mean that, in my opinion, they should be pushing you to keep that phone call going. And that's what we tend to see. They get you on the phone and they hook you and they try to make sure that you do not get off that call no matter what, until they get their money, right? That's what they're really wanting. So always verify, and they should not get upset about that. Leverage your voicemail. I know, again, like I mentioned, I'm a curious person. I love to talk. I love to talk on the phone. The one thing that we have to make sure we're not doing is entertaining conversations with strangers who could be trying to extract data, get our voice, or do something potentially nefarious, right? We don't need to be on the phone with strangers. So if you're getting a call Even if it's from your local caller ID, I don't know what the area code is here, but if you're getting a phone call, unless you're expecting a call from your dentist or your doctor or your pharmacist, and even then, I also would recommend to just let it go to voicemail. And they will leave a voicemail. If it is important, they will leave a voicemail. And if it's really important, they'll call you back, right? And they'll call you back within the next couple of days. So definitely leverage voicemail. Stay up to date. I just learned about that Facebook Marketplace scam yesterday because this lady I spoke to was talking about how she was selling some landscaping things. And she got a little pop-up on Facebook saying, do not use Zelle because the scammers are using Zelle right now on Facebook Marketplace. Doesn't mean that Zelle is scammy. It just means in this instance, we're not doing that because they clearly have found a way around it. And then learn the standard behavior. You're not going to get a call from your local police station if you miss jury duty, right? But I mean, it sounds interesting. It's a smart tactic, but you're not going to get a call. The IRS usually is not going to call you. I think most of us have never received a phone call from the IRS that we were not expecting, right? And then lastly, end the call the minute you suspect that it is a scam. And that's across the board, whether it's a voice impersonation scam or not, always end that call. And so some things to look for with the SMS in particular, this was one that got me because it was so aggressive with the texting. I don't know what yours said, the one that you guys may have received, but the one I got was like, if you don't pay your toll, we're going to take your license and we're going to find you and we're going to charge you all this money and you're going to lose points on your license. I mean, they went on and on about all the bad things that were going to happen. And it was really scary. And I think it spooked a lot of people. And that's why we saw a flood to the Easy Pass or Easy Tolls or e-tolls or whatever, each state calls it something different. That's why we were seeing such an uptick because they were using emotions to make that happen. So just pay attention to the text messages that you're receiving. Most companies right now, if they're doing SMS marketing, you can save that number, right? If you're getting messages like Nespresso, I get text messages from Nespresso about, their newest pod of coffee that they're releasing. That's okay, right? I'm expecting Nespresso to text me occasionally. And you may also get texts about, orders that you've made and purchases you're waiting to arrive. But just pay attention to the text messages and try not to click on anything and just hit that report, block, or send block button. Okay, so to close out on the scam section, we really want to make sure we're paying attention to these. When I did that research on that The Perfect Scam podcast, I thought at the time that gift card scams were kind of a thing of the past. And I was very, very wrong. Gift cards are still very popular and they work so well for people to send money. And so what I tell people is please do not ever buy a gift card that you are okay never seeing again. And don't send a gift card unless it's an actual gift. We don't need to be sending money to people through gift cards. That the whole point of it's in the term gift card. And the other thing too, I heard this on that podcast. This lady had bought, and it's terrible, but she had spent a good amount of money on the Apple Play Store gift cards. Whoever the scammer was really wanted Google Play Store gift cards. And so she spent a grip of money. I don't remember how much, let's say it was $5,000 on Google Play gift cards. And guess what? She doesn't have Google Play. She doesn't use an Android. So she spent all this money and then she realizes kind of halfway in, this isn't good. This is kind of scammy. And she gets off the phone and now she's sitting with $5,000 to an app that she can't use. And guess what else? Google Play doesn't want that money back. Google Play said, sorry, you made the purchase. It's yours. We can't take it back. Gift cards are very hard to trace. And once they're sold, they're kind of done, right? It's very difficult to get them back. Some of the major retailers like Target, Walmart, maybe Lowe's, certain companies like that, they try to pay attention. So like if you were to go into a Best Buy right now and try to grab a bunch of gift cards, you might get stopped, right? They may stop you and say, are you sure that you need this? Usually when that happens, the person is on the phone too with the scammer because the scammer refuses to let them off the phone. So we just really want to pay attention to gift card scams. And I just say, if you're going to buy that big of a gift card, make sure that you're okay with using it. And don't get it for a store that you would never shop in or that you would never use. Now, Bitcoin scams are on the rise, investment scams. This is a big one, investment scams, right? We're seeing people who are pretending to be financial advisors. getting on LinkedIn, looking realistic. Hey, guess what? I just finished this training on crypto something or other, and I made really good money doing so. Did you want to try it out? Would you like to be one of my first people? It's gotten great returns. I've seen this happen. And the person does it, and they say, well, let's just do a little bit of money. And they do a little bit of money, and it works. They're able to return that, get that return back. And then they say, okay, great. Well, it worked that time. Let's do it for a bigger amount. And then they run, right? So these are investment scams that we're seeing. And obviously tech support scams are still very popular too. I had a gentleman who said he had been a victim of like 4 different tech support scams. They're not good, right? They are able to get into your computer because you call that number and it goes downhill from there. So we just want to pay attention to these types of things. And my hope is that you guys would reach out to somebody just to get a second opinion. Like if you're getting an inkling that something doesn't sound right, ask somebody around you. Does this sound right? Because sometimes it is really well done, right? And because these folks are smart and they try to make it look as real as possible. But when you ask somebody else, then you hear, oh yeah, I actually heard about that. It was somebody posted on Facebook about that, or I saw that on the news, or my next door neighbor just said that when I talked to her when we got our mail the other day. And now all of that has been proven. So this section here, securing your accounts and devices, is important. So we're going to maybe have some things that you have not done or some to-dos that I would like for you to do. You've got my little, I made this just for you guys for this event, that one pager there with the checklist. So when you get home, please take a second to review it and mark anything that you feel like you need to do. I'm a checklist person. I love a checklist. And this, I think, will help get you going, not to distract you from what's going on right now, but in the future. So one of the things that we're seeing here is our passwords are just not strong enough. They just aren't. If you look at this, and I know it may be difficult to see from in the back of the room, but obviously the red and the orange are kind of, blurring together with the lighting. But we don't need to worry about the red and the orange anyway, because we want to be in the yellow or green, which is really down here towards the bottom, which if you look at the number, it just proves that the higher number of characters your password is, and the more unique and razzle dazzle, if you will, with uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, the better your password will be and the harder it will be for a cyber criminal to brute force their way in. And so brute force is basically them being able to use software and technology to use like an algorithm to try to guess your password really, really fast. It's fascinating. And there's a lot of math involved. So that's when my brain checks out. But all I need to know is they have technology that can try to break in to your accounts. And I've actually had to update this slide because they've gotten faster, just as an FYI. So we really want to have long passwords. And so some of you are probably like, okay, Whitney, that's lovely, but how am I supposed to remember these kind of passwords? Because I can't remember a regular password on a good day. And when I worked for the DEA, we weren't allowed to write any passwords down or we would get in trouble. And we had to change those passwords every 5 minutes. So it was really difficult. Yeah, it was very difficult. So the easiest way to deal with that is having a password manager, right? Is anybody here using a password manager right now? Okay, I see a few. I really recommend password managers. And so the analogy I like to give, and I'll keep this very brief, I could talk about this one slide for 45 minutes. So I have to time myself anyway, but I'm going to keep an eye out on this because this is, to me, one of the most important things. They say that the average person has 100 accounts, right? I feel like if you have kids, pets, hobbies, maybe a business, you have way more than that. I think in my vault, I have like 400 and I don't even have kids. So anytime that you are saving a password, if you're using a password manager, it is an encrypted way to store them. And the analogy is basically, I like to think of it as like a mansion with a lot of rooms. So you have your front door. Your front door of that mansion is going to be your master password. That's the password that gets you into the home. But every single room in that mansion represents a different account of yours. So your Apple account, your cell phone company, your whatever, all your different accounts are different rooms in that mansion, and they all have their own lock. So even if somebody gets in the house, it'd be like getting into a house or like in a government building and all the doors are locked and security, right? There's a German Shepherd at that door. There's a pin at that door. There's a Doberman. Like there's security at each of the individual doors. So that's the analogy I like to give for this. It helps to prevent from your information getting out into the dark web. It will let you know. I had somebody the other day tell me that their account one of their accounts had been flagged. And, I think it was ADT. There's a big ADT scam happening, or that happened. There was a breach with ADT. And their ADT account had been flagged, and guess who told them before ADT did? Their password manager. The password manager said, hey, your ADT information has been found on the dark web. Red flag, right? And so they were able to go and get support on that. Really interesting. But it makes the passwords for you. It saves them for you, and they're easy to access no matter what. And my other favorite part, if something happens to me, and I have like a hot pink glitter notebook, which I used to have with all my passwords in it, how is my mom going to know? How is my spouse going to know that I have my passwords in this hot pink glitter notebook that's under my bed? And is that up to date, right? So something happens to me, I can designate a person to be my backup, to have access to my accounts. So all of my important Whitney accounts are secured, and I have a backup person there in the event of an emergency, which is brilliant and it's really helpful. And they're super inexpensive. I think you can get a family account for, I don't know, like $6 or something. I don't remember how much it is, but you can pay for the year, you can pay monthly. So if you do it on your own, it's a little bit less. And then if you do a family, it's a teeny bit more, but you get 6 vaults. So you each individually would have your own password set up that you would use. There's a few. Keeper Security, Keeper with a K, Keeper. Security is one. That's one that we use at LPL quite a bit. There are several others. Apple has one, but Apple's isn't the best because you can't use it on any different browser. And if you ever, I know most of us are like, I would never get a phone that's not an Apple. But a lot of us have Apple phones, but then we have Windows computers or a laptop or a desktop. So if you want a password manager to be used across the board, you've got to get one that you're kind of paying for, right? That's a third party one. That's the easiest one to do because I have a MacBook, I've got my PC, I've got my cell phone. When I worked at Deloitte, I had 2 phones. One was an Android, one was an Apple. I can use my one password manager on all of those devices with no problem. Apple, my mom lives in Safari because she won't listen to me and get she lives in Safari. She has to use Safari because everything that she owns, it's in Safari. I'm like, yeah, but Chrome is better, or this is better. You should, no, it's okay, because she doesn't want to deal with it, right? But if you do have everything in Apple, you can export it and then import that into a different browser or to a different password manager. It's not a super complicated process. You do it once and it's done. Of course. And I can answer more questions about password managers too. I just want to make sure I'm good on time. Password tips. So we mentioned I have a German Shepherd. Making my password my dog's name, or, I love German Shepherds 47, something like that, right? We want to make sure we're not using dictionary terms or something that is, applicable to you. I don't know anything about sports, so I don't know who the sports teams are, but my dad is a Patriots fan. I was born in Massachusetts, and I can guarantee you he has had some kind of Patriots fan password. Tom Brady, I don't know, but it wouldn't be hard to find out, right? So making sure that you're not using things that are, that people know for sure would probably have something to do with your password. And we don't want to reuse the same one over and over and over. That's a big thing that we see because it's easy. Again, how are you supposed to remember 100 unique passwords that are 15? There's just no way. There are some people who can do it, and I love that for them. I just am not one of those people. So we have to make sure we are using unique passwords because if they can get into one account, that's where the dark web starts to go wrong. They find that one password on the dark web, and now they're like, well, let's try it for MasterCard. Let's try it for Apple. And then they can get in. A lot of times they can get in, especially if you don't have 2-factor authentication or multi-factor. That's going to be your saving grace here, even if your passwords are terrible. And I'm not saying that you should have terrible passwords. I want to make sure that's on the video for the record. I am not saying that you should have terrible passwords. But if you did, having multi-factor is going to help save you. Why? Because if they guess, oh, okay, her password is probably, Titanic 44, okay, they got it. You're a Titanic person. You love the movie. They are able to just get right in if you don't have 2-factor. But if you have that 2-factor, it will stop you and say, hey, what's the PIN for this account? And if they can't get the PIN, they can't get in. 2-factor, yeah, 2-factor or multi-factor authentication is just an added layer of protection. So your first sort of factor, your first level of authentication is your password, but the multi is having something else. For some people, it's you get a phone call, right, with a PIN. You may get a text message. I think I have a slide on. There we go. You have, see, you're jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead. We've got authenticator apps. These are great things to have set up. It takes 2 minutes to set it up. You set it up one time, and usually you're not bombarded. You can control how often you're asked about your PIN, right? You can say, remember this device for 30 days. And if you get a new computer, a new phone, or you go to the Bahamas and you try to log on to something, it will flag you. Hey, wait a minute, I just noticed something with this computer is different. You're not where you usually are on the device that you usually log in. What's the code? And then you have to put in the code. So I recommend this for, sure.
With a trusted computer,
Mhm.
bypass that second.
Mhm.
Is that a good idea to do that, or?
That's a great question. And thank you for asking that so I could take a sip of water. So yes, you can do that for your trusted device, because that last comment that I made about when you were to travel, if you were to go somewhere else, it's going to flag. So the whole point is to try to make sure that an unauthorized person does not get access. That's what we're trying to do. So if you are on your computer and you have the computer in your home, and there's a lesser likelihood of somebody getting into that particular device, that's when you can put trusted, right? And it will remember that device. It doesn't mean that you don't have multi-factor. You still want to have multi-factor, because that's going to protect you if somebody in Utah, somebody in New York gets your password and tries to log on, it will still stop them. So exactly. It's still going to protect you. But having that trusted means it just won't prompt you for the code as much, especially if it's like a low risk account. If you're talking financial accounts, maybe you don't want to put, trust this device. But if it's something silly, like an account you don't really use maybe that much, or an account that doesn't have anything to do with your credit card, not a bad idea, right? Oh, and then passkeys. People have asked me a lot of questions about passkeys, and so I made a slide for it. So passkeys are going to be a little bit different, because instead of it being about something that you have or something that you are, it's going to be different, right? Or in the reverse. So traditional authentication is with that password, which is the something that you have. Biometrics is something that you are, so that's your fingerprint. I don't know if they do retina really as much. I know that was more of a government thing, but your fingerprints, that's biometrics. That's what you have. That's who you are. Your security questions, right? What's your school's mascot and all of that? Those are considered your old school ways, your traditional ways of authenticating. But using no password would mean you have to have something, right? And that's going to be your actual computer. So that's where you can have a PIN and you can set this up. Bonus point here, passkeys, you can use passkeys with a password manager. So it will store everything in your password manager. It's brilliant. So it's still kind of new. So this is not something we're seeing everywhere, but they're saying that this may be something of the future that we see more of. Why? Because managing passwords is exhausting, and there surely has to be a better way. So with passkeys, they let you sign in without using that password, but instead you have something else. And that's where you could have a PIN for that computer. You could use your fingerprint, your Face ID, but it is attached to the device that you're on, like the actual device. So your phone, your tablet, or your computer. It's a relationship with the device more so than a relationship with a password. And it's harder to replicate. You can't steal it, because it's the device. It's connected to that device. And I'm going to think of a good analogy for this soon. I haven't thought of one just yet, but there is one. I love a good analogy. So I'm going to think of one for this. If you think of one, let me know after I'm finished and I'll add it in. But it's just not something that you can accidentally give away or lose, right? So it is attached to the device. So it's just a little bit different, but we're interested to see what's going on. And that's where, again, having a password manager helps to maintain all of this. Because I have been asked, I think it was Walgreens, maybe, I don't know, something to do with medical asked me recently if I wanted to create a passkey. And I said, sure, let's do that. And I still have a password, but it adds that passkey to it, and it's attached to my password manager. So whenever I go to log on, it's an extra layer of security that I now don't have to worry about, because it's with my computer. the computer that I have that I'm logging into. It is a little confusing because it's different and it's new. And so there are some YouTube videos too that can get into it a little bit deeper because everyone's a little different in how they understand some of these concepts. But um, social media is important. And I know not all of us are on social media all of the time, right? You may just have it to keep in touch with family. You may just have it for cat videos like my niece and I like to watch. But you still want to make sure that your accounts are secured. And the way you can do that is making sure that you have two-factor or multi-factor turned on. So that way, again, no matter what your password is for Facebook, Instagram, whatever, you have that backup. Because once they get in, they can terrorize everybody that you follow, and it just keeps going and going and going because that's what they want. They want data, they want access, and then eventually sometimes they do want money. But this is one where we see them being annoying. I think we've all seen a friend of ours on Facebook get hacked, and then they message us, "Hi." My favorite message that I've received when this happened is, "Hey, is this you?" Question mark, and there's a link. Seriously? I want to know, is it me? Is it a photo that somebody took of me at brunch? What's going on? And when you see something like that, it brings a curiosity. It makes that person want to click the link. Obviously, we do not want to click links, even if it looks like it's coming from a dear friend. If it looks suspicious, it probably is. Right? And this is my last section. Protecting your family, protecting your home. So a lot of us have smart homes now. We have a lot of tools. I know my parents have smart home technology. They've got blinds that go up and down. They've got the Ring cameras and all the things. Making sure that you're updating your software regularly is really important, right? Whether it's, I can say Alexa here because nobody's at home. It's lovely. If you have Alexa, if you have these different smart devices, making sure they're updated, making sure that on your Wi-Fi at home, that you know what devices are connected, right? And you don't have random devices that you don't know of. Maybe somebody, got onto the computer. It happens, especially too if you live like in an apartment style or condo style where the homes are a little bit closer together and your Wi-Fi can be seen. Reviewing the app permissions. This is important. Social media, you just download the app, but it's actually asking you things. And there's privacy policies and whatnot for what they can do and have access to. Taking a look at that, making sure you're not turning on your microphone or allowing them to access your microphone or allowing them to see your location all of the time. These are settings that you can check. I'm not saying this to spook you, just something to be aware of, right? When you're downloading these apps. Making sure everything is up to date is one of the biggest ones, though, I would say, for smart homes. Backing up your data. I think we all know how important this is, right? We'd go on vacations. We've got family members who are super cute. We've got pets we want to take photos of every 5 minutes. If you are not using cloud storage technology, please use something physical. Physical is more physical because you have to physically do it, but it's not terrible. We used those before we had the cloud, right? The cloud isn't that old. We've only had the cloud for a few years. The cloud is wonderful because it's taken that work out, but we need to make sure we're backing up our data on everything. Our computers, our cell phones, tablets, wherever you are taking photos, videos, you have documents you want to store, make sure you're doing that. Backing up your data is still very, very important because if you ever lose a device, it falls into the pool, your nephew flushes it, something, right? You're secure here and knowing that your data is backed up. Now, I did talk a little bit about how to choose your voice impersonation scam code, but this is something here I want to just reiterate. Reducing your public voice exposure is something you can do, right? I know not all of us are influencers online or selling products or whatnot, but maybe you go on vacation and you take a video of these really cool panda bears or something on a cruise ship and you want to make a video. Just being careful of what you say on these videos, and also when you're over the phone, if somebody's calling you and not just giving data. We talked about this yesterday. If you're getting a phone call, let's say somebody from WealthClarity retires or goes on a really cool vacation for quite some time and they bring in somebody temporarily. You get a random phone call from somebody named Jill, who is not a known member of WealthClarity. What do? Jill, she says, "Hey, I'm Jill. I'm calling from WealthClarity. I've got some questions for you. I want to verify, blah, blah, blah. I'm here." Maybe she knows that Shannon is on vacation. I'm here, or Lori's out, but I'm here to get some information from you. What do? Do you believe this Jill person? Right? I think the best course of action would be, you know what, Jill, you sound like a nice lady. I'm going to call my advisor real quick and then we can chat. Boom. If Jill's like, okay, great, thank you so much, green flag. If Jill's like, well, I mean, I don't know if that's super necessary, right? I'm not on the website, but I promise I work for WealthClarity. Red flag, red flag. So just making sure you're doing that and you're educating folks around you. If an account is compromised, what do you do? Something bad happens at ADT. It's pretty scary. Something like this happens to you, definitely stay calm. You want to act quickly. Do not panic. Obviously, that's the first thing we always say. In the event of a fire, do not panic. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to panic. I get that. But what do you do after that? We try our best to secure the account immediately. So this is a financial account, making sure you're changing that password, making sure you've got MFA turned on. Sometimes this is too late. The damage has been done, but at least it won't happen again in this manner. So this is why being proactive in turning MFA on is the goal. Because I've seen people, their social media accounts get hacked, and then they're kind of SOL, for lack of a better term, until Instagram or whoever the account is can help them. That could be weeks. Lots of people are getting hacked every day, every few minutes on social media, probably more quickly than that. And so you're not at the top of their list. So we have to make sure we're protecting ourselves. So secure that account, contact the company, let them know, hey, something happened here. Check your other accounts. If you know that you've been using that I Love German Shepherds password across the board, check those other accounts, right? Make sure that you go and you change that password and you turn MFA on. And then alert and report. So let somebody know, right? You can talk with your advisor, you can talk with a family friend, whomever, and let people know what's going on. And then you can also report to the Internet Crime Complaint Center, the folks who made that graphic I showed you. This is how you submit a cyber incident. The ic3.gov website, you can file a complaint. It doesn't take too long just to file this complaint. If something happens with your identity and you have been a victim of identity theft, identitytheft.gov. Super easy to do. Also, I kind of like their website a little bit better, but you want to go to both to report. Identity theft protection, I think a lot of us have heard of LifeLock, right? Credit-wise, I added Aura because an office had mentioned that Aura is a different company out there now. Experian, we've got different ways in which we can keep an eye out on our accounts. So we just want to make sure if we're interested to sign up, right? You can. This is the lady that I was talking about with the ADT incident. She found out through LifeLock first. And I think that was her first reach out. LifeLock reached out to her. I also recommend freezing your credit to make sure when it comes to identity theft, this is something you can control. If you freeze your credit and you do not allow it to be open to just, access, it does reduce the damage that can be done. Somebody gets your information, your social, and they want to try to open an account somewhere, they're not going to get very far if your credit is frozen. They will not get very far. So this is another pro tip that we like to recommend. Yeah, maybe I could make a site about that. Freezing your credit, there's a couple different ways. You have to go to the individual bureaus to do it. And you do it one time and you can freeze it. I think there's a couple options. I think you can also freeze it for certain reasons, or you can freeze it. So like if you know that you're going to be getting a car soon, you can freeze it, but then like leave that part out so you can go and get the car. I did hear that it's like kind of customizable depending on how you do it. But yeah, it doesn't take long to do. And then you can unfreeze it at any time, right? Whenever you want. Lastly, when you're on the go, traveling, making sure that you're staying vigilant on the go. When you go ahead. And I don't know how long it takes to do that. I think that would be interesting to know.
I've done this before. I can speak on this.
Yeah.
My credit cards were hacked. I had to go have the same code. Have to call each one of the credit bureaus. Say I was refinancing. Hey, it works.
Mhm.
So I had to find another code. Oh, it's a different code for each one. But it does.
And here's a pro tip.
I've done this before. It works.
It does work, and it's great for keeping people out. I think one thing that you can do when you use a password manager, you can actually save stuff like that in your password manager so that it's organized. You can create a little note and put whoever that credit bureau is and then the code next to it. And you can save that right in your password manager. That's what I would do. And I use my password manager to save things like that. So when I travel, I have my TSA global entry. There's like a special like known traveler ID or something that's different from your other account info. I have that saved as a note in my password manager because sometimes when I'm traveling a different airline, I've got to know that code or that like number, and it's ridiculous. It's like 999000. It's something stupid. I'm not going to remember that. And so I have it saved as a note in my password manager, so I always have it. So that's a great place to put those unique codes. So they're not just floating around somewhere in a hot pink glitter notebook like mine. Okay, so we're almost done here. This is really just closing out on traveling safely and being aware of local scams. I do get a lot of comments and questions about using public Wi-Fi. So just making sure that you're aware of when you're on the go and you're using Wi-Fi and connecting, not doing things that are, potentially stuff you would not want someone to see because they are able to see sometimes what you are doing if you are on a public Wi-Fi. Protecting your family really does mean, this slowing down the spread of unverified content. We didn't talk about deepfakes or AI in this presentation. Maybe we talk about that in a different presentation on a different day. But making sure that before you share things and send things out, you do verify that they're real. Normalize having conversations where we verify people, whether it's professionally or with our family. Reinforcing the difference between information and advice, and then reducing public digital exposure. So that's it. These are your call to actions here. Know that LPL is committed to keeping you guys secure and safe, and that your advisors are as well, right? WealthClarity is doing everything in their power to keep you guys safe and abreast of what's going on. And don't click on anything strange, links or attachments. And know that social engineering attacks are meant to take your information and use your emotions, and always value security over convenience when traveling, and protect those accounts. So I'll show you my disclosure form I have to show, or else the compliance people get mad. I have to stay on this slide for 10 seconds. But I'm really excited to answer any questions that you guys may have.
What was the name of that podcast?
Yeah, it's called The Perfect Scam. The Perfect Scam, hosted by AARP. I think I found it doing research, but they are on the Apple Podcast app, and I also think Spotify and probably Google Podcasts as well. Yep. No, I think you can use them, right? I think you can use them. Really, we have to think about what's the likelihood of somebody having access to being. So it depends. I can't blanket answer that because a lot of times when they have Wi-Fi, they do have rules. You have to connect. Usually there's some kind of authentication process for you to get in. I know Marriott, you've got to have an SPG account. Hilton, same thing. There is a level of security and authentication. They're not just letting anybody usually get onto those Wi-Fis. Why? Because it bugs it down. It makes it slow. People get mad. That's why you also will see how you can pay extra for faster Wi-Fi. Don't know if that's always necessary, but you have to think about what somebody can do or get access to, or what they may want. So if I would not necessarily do my taxes or something like that on a public, yeah, I mean, you could pay a credit card bill, but you want to make sure that that credit card company is secure, right? So if you're going to go pay Bank of America, make sure your password is good to go. And also you've got MFA on multi-factor on Bank of America, because if they were to see something, what could they do, right? The cool thing is when you're paying that bill, you're not going into your statements really and looking at your personal address, right? They could see what? They could see the last 4 digits of the card, maybe, you know what I mean? So just paying attention to what they could visually see and get access to, and then making sure all these accounts are safe. All of them have to be safe on their own. Because checking your email is great, but most of us have multi-factor on our email, but some of us don't. So I know Gmail really pushes you for MFA. Microsoft Outlook really pushes you to have MFA, but not everybody does. I can't speak for all the email accounts. So just double checking. I would go home, and at some point, maybe when the weather isn't nice, take a look at all of your accounts that mean something to you and check to see what you have multi-factor turned on for and what you don't. And then I would also prioritize the accounts that you have the most money. honestly, anything where your debit card or credit card is attached should have multi-factor. So that's going to include PetSmart, Chewy, Starbucks. My sister's Starbucks got hacked. She didn't know for weeks. And it sounds silly, but somebody was in Orlando, Florida, playing around with her points, using her points, cashing her points in. They called Starbucks, changed her birthday. Starbucks somehow let this happen. Hopefully they've changed their security policy by now, but she had no clue, right? And it's something silly, but your debit card is attached to that. And I made my whole family turn multi-factor on for their Starbucks app. Why? Because your debit card is right there and you can add money and you can buy gift cards and you can go shopping and all the things right within the app. So there's got to be layers turned on for things like that, even if they seem kind of silly. Any other questions? Okay. If you think of anything, let us know. And if you're watching this in the future and you have a question, please reach out to your WealthClarity team for questions in the future. Thank you.